Secretary of State Rubio sent out an ex-post after the Oval Office blow-up saying, quote, "Thank you, POTUS, President of the United States, for standing up for America in a way that no president has ever had the courage to do so before. Thank you for putting America first. America is with you." Let's bring in Tammy Bruce, spokesperson for the State Department. Tammy, I have a feeling that message that was put out by your boss, by the Secretary of State, wasn't just a message to the American people. It was a message to the world, as I was talking about with General Keane, that you just can't squeeze America any further.
Well, that's right. And look, this is what the American people voted for. They want a team of leadership, as embodied by, with the vision of the president, to stand up for this country, and not through, some kind of obscure diplomatic talk or secret meetings, but in public, in the environment of the White House, where it is clear that the American people can see what the dynamic is and what the President of the United States thinks. Not only will we see it, as we did, but the enemies of this country also see it. Yeah. It was a framework, ultimately, of the nature of what does it sound like to stand up for the United States? What does it sound like for that team of people? You have the President, you have the Vice President, you have the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. The notion of diplomacy in action with blunt talk and a clarity that you rarely see. It was exciting. It's important. It is part and parcel of what will make America great again, is the fact that you can stand up for the country, make demands about what is going to make us safer and stronger and more prosperous, and make sure that our friends and enemies know exactly where we stand. That was accomplished today. Yeah. It's going to be, Zelensky has a number of choices he's going to have to make, and clearly he's got a big problem in his country. Donald Trump is the recognized as the key leader in the issue of peace on this planet and how to make countries stronger and get on their feet and get over the malaise and the problems of the last 4 years. He is the man to listen to. He is the one who has been right through this entire process, and he still is. So it was very exciting, and we're very proud of him. And we know also with Secretary Rubio in that room, the nature of how this gets translated across the world is going to be very distinctive. Right. And I'm very excited and very proud, as all Americans should be.
There was somebody else in that room. Who, the ambassador from Ukraine was in that room, and she was holding her forehead when all this went down. It wasn't clear whether she was just upset at the whole scene, or I think a lot of it had to do with her being upset with Zelensky. Of course, I can't get into somebody's head, but there is a question about whether Zelensky can continue on as president. I mean, Lindsey Graham voiced that question out loud right after the meeting, saying, either he makes a dramatic turnaround very quickly, or he should not be the leader of that country. I mean, is the State Department, is it going to take a position on that point?
Well, what, of course, we always recognize, and what's vitally important in the diplomatic world and a democratic world, is that the people of Ukraine will decide those issues. This is an issue for those individuals who have faced an extremely difficult time. War is horrible. It has been an awful conflict. We had tremendous success at the UN, at the Security Council, calling for an end to this conflict. An American-led resolution, very simple. Right. Nobody wins in this environment. Right. So our position has always been what it has been, which is the people of every country decide for themselves, but that obviously this war needs to end. President Trump is the one who's able to do it. And of course, President Zelensky, I think, maybe is having some second thoughts, but he has a chance to turn this around, and he probably should, for the sake of his people.
Tammy, I just want to put up a couple of charts here. The general American, this is from a Harvard-Harris poll. Most voters want Ukraine to negotiate a settlement. The question, do you want Ukraine to continue the war against Russia or negotiate a settlement with Russia? 72% say they want to negotiate a settlement. Do you favor or oppose Donald Trump announcing direct U.S.-Russia negotiations to end the war? 60% favor him doing that. And then you had this ex-post put out by the only member of Congress who's a Ukrainian migrant to the United States, Victoria Spartz. She said Zelensky is doing a serious disservice to the Ukrainian people, insulting the American president and the American people just to appease Europeans and increase his low polling in Ukraine. Do you think that had anything to do with it?
You know, I think that what is driving Mr. Zelensky is not something that we can imagine, but we do know that his options are very clear, that the war needs to end, the carnage has got to stop. This is not a controversial position. It is something that the United States can help with, but only because Donald Trump is the president and because now of the reputation that has been developed because of Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State. These are things, it's the Trump vision as implemented by and interpreted by Marco Rubio and his point of view about what's possible in the world. Yeah. And so Zelensky has the benefit of great American leadership to make the difference. Today was inexplicable.
No, it
and
was.
I think that everyone in the world wants it to change. We went over some of that with the general, but I just quickly have to ask you, because I'm way over time here, but was the deal for the minerals deal, was that already made up? Was it ready to sign today? Well, I don't work in the White House. I don't speak for the White House, but obviously the president made an arrangement, and he is the ultimate deal maker. He's a businessman. That arrangement, I don't think would have happened unless the president, he greeted Zelensky warmly. He had a mission for today. It was announced. Yeah. It seems like it was, and it doesn't mean that it still can't be done. Right, and that's where real leadership comes from, and Zelensky can, I think, exhibit that for us.
Tammy, we'll leave it at that. And by the way, I never had a chance in person to congratulate you on your new position. Thank you very much for being here, Tammy.
Thank you, David.
Great.